I wanted to ask on a more personal note, speaking from your own experience, what have you found to be helpful when challenging your own views and prejudices and biases? Because we're all guilty of them, but it's to somehow take a, a second to reflect on that. How do we do that and encourage ourselves to sort of broaden those views?
Okay, so I think for me it's been about three main things, and one is about education, and another one is about talking about it with other people, and then the third one would be about actively promoting the diversity, equality and inclusion side of things. So firstly, education, I am learning so much. I'm still learning every day. I certainly don't claim to know everything about these issues in the slightest, but I am willing and I'm eager to learn. But there are some really great experts out there. So I've already mentioned Liz Pemberton, and do look up her work. Aaron Bradbury from Early Years Reviews, he's done some great work around inclusion and particularly around the gender side of things. The more I learn, the more I find I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, I've been trying to read some really challenging books to try and educate myself. I've read most recently White Tears, Brown Scars, and it's really made me look at my whiteness and actually how, as a white woman, white women have actually contributed to racism over the years, sometimes by being silent, but often through playing the victim themselves. And it was a very uncomfortable read. I can't claim that I understood it all because I didn't, but I have had some helpful colleagues to talk to about it as I've been reading it through. I still have a lot to learn, but I have found it really helpful to talk to people. So my kind of second point was about discussing these things with people, and I think that that's really important. The more we can talk about equality and diversity, the more we will be able to challenge ourselves and perhaps deal with our own prejudices a little bit. So I mean, other people have different perspectives. They might be able to help us to understand different things. Sometimes talking to other people helps you to clarify your own thinking as well. And also sometimes it helps us to try and understand them better, and why they might think that way. So developing our empathy and our perspective taking is sort of really helpful as well. But my last sort of thoughts about this was really about actively promoting diversity and equality and inclusive practice, because I've found it helpful not to just say, oh, I'm not racist, but actually to try and be actively anti-racist. So I think in the past it's been quite easy for people to do that about sexism, for example. So if you heard someone making a coarse joke or being sexist, it as a woman, I would have stood up for that and I would have said, hang on a minute, that's not appropriate. Or, I would have sort of said something about it. I need to make sure I'm doing the same thing and I'm challenging any racist remarks and promoting anti-racist practice. And as I say, I'm still learning this. But I think the new Birth to Five Matters helps. It talks a little about this in the inclusion section. So what I'm trying to do is notice times and areas in my work or in my everyday life where I can either speak out or get involved. So getting involved, for example, I've joined the LGBTQ early years group. So that aims to produce some free different resources and booklets to provide advice and guidance for early years settings around that area. And also there are other initiatives out there like the Early Years Black List, and that's aimed at event organisations and people in the media who are looking to really highlight diverse and authentic voices. But it's a list of Black people who have great expertise and knowledge in early years education. So if anyone was wanting to book somebody, they can actually think about representation and book people. I'm trying to find out, for example, when I'm speaking on a panel, who the rest of the panel is, and I'm asking questions about representation and things like that. So I kind of feel like I'm trying, but I'm still learning. It's tricky, but
We all are.
yeah, absolutely. So some of the people I've mentioned, do look up, their websites, because I think lots of people are active on social media, and it's worth just finding out more. So we have people like Aaron and Liz, and the LGBTQIA early years group, and the early years blacklist, and things like that. So the more we can support these different movements, I think the better. So
Yes, definitely. Thanks for that. I'll share those as well.
thank you.
I'm just thinking about myself and one of my own experiences I had, because I was born in Zimbabwe, and then I didn't even visit again from the age of 7 until I was about 23 years old.
Really? Yeah.
I then moved to New Zealand, I moved to the UK,
Yeah.
and those were obviously very different experiences and different
Yeah.
cultures and different people. But what happened is that I became quite distanced from being surrounded by a Black community, which growing up as a child was perfectly normal. And
Yes.
it was just normal. And then going back to Zimbabwe as a 23-year-old, it kind of shocked me to
Yeah.
feel so white when
Yes.
everyone else in the room was Black.
Yes.
And it's just suddenly becoming the minority when you've always been in the
Yes.
majority, and how you deal with that.
Absolutely.
And I think, it can be really quite scary and quite off-putting. But one of the things that put me at ease instantly was how they received me. And I was just treated as another person that they could talk to, and they were interested in where I was from and my stories. And it's showing that interest that can start a conversation, and it starts people communicating and learning from one another. And I think that's really great. That was cool.
Absolutely. Gosh. I grew up in an incredibly white area down in Devon. And I think in my secondary school, where there were 1,500 pupils, there were probably there were 2 Black students, and there were probably about 10 Asian students. And possibly a couple of other students who perhaps were mixed heritage or something. I don't really know, but it was so white. It's unbelievable. And then obviously in my adult life, I moved to the southeast, into the Woking area, which was very different. And it was quite a shock for me, because, and also I hadn't been aware in the slightest of my white privilege, and didn't even know what the term was about. In fact, if I'm honest, I was probably quite offended at the thought of it. But the more I'm finding out and the more I'm reading, the more awful you think, oh my goodness, this is awful. And the more educated I feel we all need to become, myself totally included in that, because it's not, if you've not encountered racism, I don't think you can really genuinely understand. I can sympathize rather than empathize. I can't empathize because I've not been in those shoes. So
no.
Yeah.
No, thanks very much, Tamsin. You've given us a lot to think about. So thanks for all your time.